Okay.
Senior year, man.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Morning. How are you? Nice to see you.
Somebody called anything to order.
I know, right?
We intuited it.
It was like somebody
Being obedient.
Well, good morning, and I wanted to say thank you very much to our superintendent and Board of Education. I think it's great that we can get together informally and just talk about some things that are going on. It's always great when we get together with some of our other stakeholders as well, whether it's our regional services directors, whether it's our congressmen and senators, just to talk about joint issues that are obviously of importance to both of us, and how we can continue to work together to make sure that we're trying to do everything that we can to make Montgomery County one of the best places to live, work, and play. That's a common theme that we keep talking about, and I want to make sure, and hopefully with all of us, we have that same sort of mesh of those goals. And I know that, unfortunately, some of my colleagues, there's this little thing called traffic in Montgomery County. Continue to try and do our part working with our state delegation and working on that. But I know that some of my colleagues, unfortunately, are running a little bit behind, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to go ahead and get started. There's no formal agenda, as there never is in these kinds of meetings. It's just a chance for us to kind of talk. But I wanted to turn it over to both the president and superintendent if you wanted to start off with anything, and then I'll just go over a couple issues that I know that we have that we're very excited to hear are going very well. I also happen to chair the education committee, but actually first, why don't we just go around? I know everybody knows each other, but I think that it's good for folks that are in the audience too if we just go around and say who we are. We can start with Councilmember Reed. It's all love, baby.
Wait until I put the bagel in.
It's perfect timing.
I am Councilmember Ringer.
Phil Foppin, President of the Board.
Judy Donka, member of the board.
Good morning, Mike Durso, District 5, Board Member.
Heather O'Neill, Vice President of the board.
Phil Andrews, council member from District 3, which is this area. County Council Vice President George Leventhal.
Sheree Branson, County Council, District 5.
Craig Rice, County Council President.
Rebecca Smondrasky, Board of Education, District 2.
Shirley Brandon, member of the board.
Chris Barclay, member of the board.
Good morning, I'm Dahlia Ha, I'm the new student member.
Good morning, everybody. Josh Darcy.
Yeah.
How about those in the general appreciation?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let's start here.
James Gutsos, president of McCat,
Former
principal of Clarksburg High School for 9 years, co-coyote.
Not that I.
No bias.
No bias at all.
Kara Lee Turner Little, Executive Director to Dr. Starr.
Walton Harris from Councilmember George Leventhal's office.
Laura Steinberg, staff to the board.
Sidney Katz, a graduate of MCPS.
And?
And the mayor of the greatest city in the world, Gaithersburg, Maryland.
And?
The possibility of getting on the Montgomery County Council District 3.
There we go. All right.
Brian Atkins, Chief Communications Officer from Montgomery County Public Schools.
Larry Bowers, Chief Operating Officer.
Maria Navarro, CAO.
Kim Statham, Deputy Superintendent, School Support and Improvement.
Roland and Kawachi, staff of the school board and the ombudsman for the school system.
Chris Lloyd, I teach 4th graders at Weller Road Elementary School.
Doug Crowdy, MCA.
Sharon St. Pierre, Craig Rice's office.
Adam Panuco with Councilmember Reamer's office.
Ken Silverman with Councilmember Reamer's office.
Andy Zuckerman, MCPS.
Adam Fogel with Councilmember Navarro's office.
Linda Moran from the Rockville City Manager's office.
Steve Parker, Council Administrator.
Crystal Ruiz, Councilmember Reamer's office.
Sonia Healy, Councilmember Branson.
Essie McGuire, Council Central staff.
Lisa Mandel, Tropical Andrews office.
Bob Drummer, Council Legal Staff.
Warren Hanson with Roger Berliner's office.
Rachel Silverman, Office of Management and Budget.
Jada Startucci, Parents Coalition.
Dale Tibbetts, Councilmember Elrich's office.
Donna St. George, Washington Post.
Nancy Noato,
Perfect timing. Perfect.
Randolph Row is a little bit
problematic down wires today.
So I just wanted to say very briefly that, we obviously share the same goals. Education is certainly a priority for Montgomery County. It's reflected in our budget, but it's also reflected in many of the conversations that we have, whether it's dealing with workforce development, making sure that things like the achievement gap are solved. All of those things are top priorities for both of us. And so I'm very happy that we continue to have a great working relationship together to make some of those things happen. I just wanted to highlight some of the things that I think have gone extremely well. Recently the Education Committee talked about ACEs and had a briefing about the success stories that are there, and it's absolutely tremendous. It's great to see that both our school system as well as Montgomery College, working in collaboration together with USG, are able to achieve some great success stories and great results for some at-risk children that I actually had the pleasure of running into. I won't go over the story again, but it's great to see that some of those people are going on and excelling. They're now enrolled at colleges where they really weren't sure if they were even going to take that pathway anymore. And so expanding the opportunities for all of our kids is something that's a shared priority for all of us. And so I'm really happy to see that. I'm also happy to see that we continue to focus on different kinds of priorities throughout the budget process this year that actually targeted addressing the achievement gap from different ways in which to do it, which is great, whether it was strategic teacher placement, many of our schools, all of those kinds of things matter. And we just need to keep the focus and keep moving the needle. I appreciate, and again, it's personal to me, so I just always keep talking about it, but it's great to see that we're talking about the safety of our children, whether it's pedestrian safety, and seeing the new initiative that's there for kids that are walking to school, making sure that we're educating them about the dangers of crossing roads, but also making sure that our kids that ride buses and having the school bus cameras. And I will dovetail into a little bit of that will need your help as we go to Annapolis and ask for a doubling of the fines. I think that's extremely important. I think it's something that, again, us together, there's no question that a lot of parents and community feel as though this is very egregious. Unfortunately, we continue to have people that pass our school buses. As I sat there this morning, I thought about it and thought to myself about what someone else would do as I was parked right in front of my house and a school bus pulled right up and it sat there because the child was running late. Well, you wait. But a lot of people, and we know this, don't wait. And they don't know where that child is coming from. If they weren't there in that neighborhood, if they didn't live there, they don't know if that child's going to come darting across the street because they're running late, and they know this, and you decide to take off and can hit a child and put a child at risk. So it's those kinds of things, again, that it's really important for us to make sure that we continue to educate people on. Overall, I think that, again, we have a tremendous school system. Many of us are products of MCPS. You heard about it from Mayor Katz. I also am a product of the Montgomery County Public School System. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, and there's always ways in which we can continue to strive to improve. And that's what we continue to do every day. And there are many stakeholders that are around this table, as well as in this room, and in our community that continue to push us to do that. That's great. We always want to do that. We always want to strive for the next level of achievement and getting to the next bar. And so I think that we can do that together. The key is that we've got to continue to talk and converse and have open dialogue, have an open way in which to say, if, hey, we think that maybe you should do things differently, that we can say that without it being critical, without it being something that's, saying that, oh, I want to jump into your shoes and make a decision for you. That's not what it's about. It's about us working together. And I think that the same kind of relationship that we've had with other agencies, departments, is the same thing that we have with MCPS. It's that same collaborative spirit. So I didn't want to talk and take up the whole meeting. Welcome, Councilmember Eller.
Hello.
Okay, yeah. Phil, did you just want to make any opening remarks? Or?
I just want to say that it's great to be here. It's been a while since we've gotten together like this, but I think that this is an opportunity, as you said, for us to hear from each other. On our school board, we don't always agree with each other. I'm sure on your council, you don't always
Oh,
agree
what are
with
you
each
talking
other.
about? Of course we do.
But I think it's good, as you said, for us to talk respectfully to each other. We'll have different views on how we should be doing, how we should be doing our work. But I think the importance is that we hear each other out and we work to collaborate. Because, as you said, we're all doing. For us, it's about our school system. That's our top priority. We understand that your role is a little bit different, and we are just one part of the community. But I think that there is, we've heard enough from you all that education is number one priority for this in Montgomery County, and we appreciate the roles that you all play, and we're just happy to be here to talk to you.
Superintendent. So good morning, everybody. Again, I want to reiterate what Phil said in terms of thanking you for creating this opportunity to talk about the work of schools. The more we talk openly about what's going on in this really, really complex world of ours, the better off we are as the leaders. So I very much appreciate the opportunity. So I could easily talk for 2 hours about all the incredible things we're doing, and I won't. But I want to talk about desks. Right? I go to a lot of schools, as much as I can, and I just so happen to be going to middle schools a lot these days, randomly. And I've noticed something in classrooms this year that that is incredibly encouraging, that I just wasn't necessarily expecting or anticipating, but schools are doing in really powerful ways. I don't think I've been in one middle school classroom this year where desks are in a row. Right? I've been to a lot of middle schools. Every single school, every classroom I've been in, the teachers have realized that if they want to focus on student engagement, which is one of the absolute top priorities, they have to get kids talking to each other, which means you have to actually position the desks so that kids are talking to each other. And then when I talk to the principal and the staff development teacher and the teachers about what the focus is, I always walk around and say, what are you focused on? And they are they are focused on student-to-student discourse, which sounds, it's a educator ease issue, but the idea is the more kids, particularly middle school kids who we know are, needs to talk, the more that you actually, the teacher steps back and the kids are talking to each other, the more they learn from each other. This is not something that we dictate, right? This is not something that we demand. This is something that we encourage, we coach, we train. We say, you know what? Every school needs a focused school improvement plan with very clear goals that you're accountable for, tied to your student data, right? Every school needs an instructional focus that is preparing kids for very new standards. I think we all know we have the new PARC test coming out this year. Brand new test for us, brand new. I'd love to have the opportunity to share with the council the tests themselves. They are so different. AP has changed, SAT is changing next year. There's so much change, but the teachers and the teachers and the school leaders have figured out large and small ways of improving what kids are doing every single day in the classroom. So when I go to schools, and I, of course, always invite council members and others to come to schools with me, to see that manifest differently in different ways, right? Not every school is doing the same, which is how innovation and creativity happens. We have 202 schools with fabulous leaders, right? We have teachers that are beyond what you see in other districts in terms of their quality, their commitment to equity, their commitment to our kids. And to see it when you walk into a classroom, to see how they're changing things in large ways and small, tells me two things. One, our folks have really, really embraced the idea that we have to change, we have to get better, and they're doing it in some powerful ways. And two, that's the extent to which our school communities focus on what works for them, right? It's good. What happens in Tacoma Park Elementary School might be different than Matsunaga, right? But they're both focused on the same thing, around student engagement, right? Around ensuring our kids have academic, creative problem solving, and social and emotional skills, right? And we're seeing it in some really powerful ways. We've seen that when we focus on relationships with kids, we will reduce suspensions, right? We saw that this past year. We'll see it continue. I expect it will show results in other ways as well. We're seeing that when we continue to partner with our associations, we will come up with innovative things like our Career Lattice program, which really encourages our best teachers to take on additional work in our toughest schools. And then when we partner with our community agencies, whether it's Health and Human Services, whether it is the police department, or whether it's Montgomery College, we'll be able to do great programs, and we'll continue to do that work. We're seeing schools increase opportunities for kids to take on college level work through 2 new early college programs that we have, one at Northwood, one at Northwest, where kids can graduate with an associate's degree in a STEM-related field as well as their high school degree. We're seeing teachers lead some amazing work at Wheaton High School around project-based learning, which we're now extending to all other schools. And again, I could go on and on about all this, but I won't. So we're seeing the fruits of some really incredible labor, led by, of course, the folks sitting behind me, who do amazing work with our administrators, our leaders, our teachers, our support professionals, and we're doing it because the partnerships that exist within the system that are deeply, deeply committed to our core values. Right? We learn together, we build relationships with each other, with our kids, with our families, where the new community engagement work that we're doing is just so powerful. We respect each other, right? We absolutely demand excellence of ourselves, of our kids, and of our staff, and ultimately, it's all about equity. Those who need the most from us deserve the most, right? We organize our budget that way, we organize our resources that way, and we are seeing some powerful things happen with kids, with families, with teachers as a result. So with that, I'll stop. I'm happy to engage in any part of what we're doing in the system.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate between board and I don't want to take over, Mr. President, for you. And I think it's just easier that way since I've got a view of the whole thing. Councilmember Reamer was first.
Well, great discussion. Thanks for the presentation. Just a quick note on the consumer side. I'm experiencing curriculum 2.0, with my son in first grade, and I talked to some of the teachers about it, and there's a lot of enthusiasm about it. I think it's probably not often appreciated just how powerful it will be. It's very positive. Wanted to raise an issue, which is the space for childcare in schools. And in last year's budget, we discussed in the capital budget, the issue that there's only, I think, a small handful of schools that are currently programmed for childcare in the school space. That's a program that the county has funded through the HHS budget. And I really believe we could make it easier for families by including more space in the school system, renovation, modernization, and new construction programs for childcare space. And as we are going forward, we're going to have to just do more and more to connect early childhood with, the continuum of education. And so that will be an issue that I think will continue to come up. But I'd welcome any thoughts about, the strategic value of childcare in the schools. And then I wanted to ask about bell times, just an update on that. I know an issue we've discussed a lot, but don't quite remember where we are. I think you didn't put it in your budget last year.
So around childcare in schools, we discussed that first, we talked about times. So I'm a big believer that schools are community assets. It should be to the extent possible. And certainly the new building at Wheaton is designed with the idea that it should be a community asset. We have healthcare centers, et cetera, et cetera. We do have space crunches, so it's a matter of just trying to manage all of that and also work with the I always forget the board. Thank you. Yeah, the ICB that actually determines the different folks who are in the buildings, and then there's also the state reimbursement issue. They only reimburse us for certain aspects of it, but certainly the more capital money that we go to creating our spaces, our schools to be spaces that embrace community partnerships, we're always amenable to those conversations. So with bell times, we did an incredibly thorough process with an extensive community engagement and a lot of analysis about what's possible. And The price tag was about $25 million or so to make the change that would have been the right change. Because you can do no-cost options by simply flipping high school and elementary kids, which doesn't make any sense. It's about $25 million or so. Frankly, I felt that while I am very supportive of the idea of changing bell times, it is an important issue. It is not, however, of the same urgency that we need to spend the $25 million on other things. So I do not feel it was fiscally responsible to come to the board or to the council and say, you know what, on top of everything else, let's add another 25 million or so because we have other very, very pressing needs. The board did ask us to take another look at it to see if we could come up with a solution for under 10 million. And we are working hard at that. We'll have something out sometime in the next few months to see if there's another way of doing it. You know, other districts that have done this, I don't know anybody that was able to do it first time out. Right? You had to do a lot of analysis and thinking about it, but there are costs associated with it. And again, I didn't feel it was reasonable to ask for the additional money from the school board or the county council because we have other really, really pressing needs.
Thank you. Dr. Daka.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Dr. Starr was saying about the students in middle school being in a circle and with the teacher. This causes a lot of engagement because they have to listen to each other. They may have to repeat somebody else's answer. And it makes them stay awake through the whole thing. It doesn't mean that I'm in the back row, they're not gonna call on me. So this is really an important concept. And just one other thing, the Career Lattice is also in the SEID program as well.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you. Well, a comment and then a question. One is about school construction. With the school system growing at 2,500 to 3,000 students a year now consistently, unfortunately, the last 10, 15 years, we've consistently gotten only about 11 or 12% of the state's school construction pie. So this seems to be the time to redouble the efforts with the incoming governor and General Assembly to make sure that we're getting a fair share of what we are providing to Annapolis, because we've been shorted about $140 million over the last decade just from that formula, and that is that's a new high school and a new elementary school, basically. So that would have helped a lot. So that's the comment. The question is about school safety, and Council President Rice started off talking about school bus cameras, which is certainly part of that. The council added $1 million in this budget to add 10 school resource officers, so that we now have, in combination with Rockville and Gaithersburg, which each provide, thank you, Mayor Katz and City Councilors provide a school resource officer at Gaithersburg, and City of Rockville provides one, and Rockville, the sheriff, also providing one now. So with the 22 that have been funded by the county and those three, we've got 25, which is equal to the number of high schools we have, and while they're not allocated equally by high school because of the different size of high schools, I know that Chief Manger's intention was to have it in place with the start of this school year. So I was wondering how that's going from your perspective.
Quite well from everything I'm hearing. Again, I really appreciate the council's support of the SRO program and partnership that we have with Chief Manger. He is absolutely doing his part in terms of making sure we have the right people who are doing it, because you got to have the right SROs. And remember, the SRO program, when it started in the late 90s, it was really an extension of community policing. It is wonderful to have police officers in schools to help with safety and security issues, but the original intent of the program was always about building bridges between police officers and kids, and I know that the chief continues to have that stance, and we, of course, appreciate the officers that are doing work. We're doing a lot of shared training, communication, just a lot of hard work between the two different agencies to make sure that we're on top of it, and really encouraging the principals to build relationships as well. We are in the process, I should say, of negotiating the memorandum of understanding that goes back to 2002 or 2003. With a new code of discipline, a new code of conduct, new practices, we just have to make sure that everything is aligned, but we're doing that work, and I appreciate the chief's support, stance on this, and I very much appreciate the council putting the money in the budget so we can have a full complement of SROs in our
Great. And let me just say, whenever we have a discussion about SROs at the council, you're well represented by Mr. Durso, who has always been there on this issue and knows the personal benefits of it.
Before I turn to Councilmember Navarro, I just wanted to jump in and chime in on that because I really do appreciate that there were challenges, right? But we had that conversation. So there were concerns that were addressed by the school system, by the principals, and we talked about it and we figured out a way to make it work so that we could move forward together. And that's what this is always about. It's about figuring out a way to which we can reach that common goal of achieving safety for our students, but also, like you said, really adding a new aspect of it to where we're talking about the true community policing, what it means to build relationships. And the more people that we can have that are building relationships with our kids, especially when it comes to some of our at-risk kids, is important, right? And so it's not, you know, I don't even like the concept of policing in our schools because it really is about relationship building to make sure that they're added resources for our kids. So, I mean, I just want to thank you very much for the support and for working together with us on that. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be here to talk to you about some of our issues and interests, and also, you know, really want to, again, just step back and thank everybody for all the dedication of your work. I often used to say when I was serving on the Board of Education that it's kind of a strange position to be in because locally we hear a lot of the criticism and how we can improve and, you know, what's not happening. When you step outside of the region, what you find is the moment you say you're with Montgomery County Public Schools, you're a member of the board, everybody just pretty much bows because we excel. Yeah.
Myself, the county council.
Yeah, so it's a strange dynamic, but you know, it's constant, and I still try to milk it whenever I can. But I just, you know, there's so many issues obviously that we could address, and you know, we could talk for months, I think. But I just wanted to ask about a couple of issues that really have to do with maybe strategy, sort of strategic direction, where things are, and I will connect them. So one of the most important points for me as a member of the council as we get into budget conversations has to do, obviously, you know, understanding, of course, where the resources are going and how and why. The issue of scalability is a big one for me. It's always been sort of this intriguing question. And I do understand that each school does things differently for their community. But we also have all these bright spots everywhere that we're always talking about. And at some point, I wonder, you know, if we don't need to select some of those bright spots that we know are following best practices and have extraordinary results, and really commit to them. Because specifically as we're looking at the academic achievement gap, and we're looking at the student demographics. So we know already, I mean, it's there, we all understand it. We know that there are certain things that really work for some students, and we know that we have geographically identified which schools are predominantly comprised of those students. So, you know, whether it's, for example, the issue of parental engagement, I mean, there was a report released today, and the demographics of the workforce in the school system is key to parental engagement. You know, it's key to academic achievement. So although I know we have career lattices and we have the SEIU, I've yet to hear of a robust, intentional, scalable type of short-term and long-term strategy to diversify the staff. And I know this is something we've discussed for years. So that's one question. You know, what's going on with that? You know, will we see in the next budget certain initiatives that we can commit to? Because as we move forward in the future with some conversations about MOE, I know that for me, it's important to say and point to these particular strategies that I know we can then put our money behind it because we expect to have certain metrics. So that's one thing. So that whole question of scalability versus individual schools leading their charge. And then the second part is just a very simple one. I know that our METS classes, I mean, what people have been saying to me is that our METS classes seem to be pretty much over capacity, kind of exploding, it seems, because of the issue of the unaccompanied minors, which we still don't know how many because, you know, they come from different places. Where are we with that? Did we open classes, or are we expanding some of those classes?
Councilman Navarro, what is METS? That's
METS,
a new
it's classes for children who come without formal education or interrupted education, and so they're placed in certain, you know, classrooms. And the feedback I've gotten is that there's obviously a big pressure because of the unaccompanied minors that have come. So those two issues.
They include children of all ages?
Yeah. Typically those middle of high school because the kids will be older, hence the interruption. Right? Maybe a 13-year-old kid that's come in that, you know, has missed a couple of years of school. So there are a bunch of different issues going on there. I'll try to address them in a few different ways. We start with the staff diversity issue, and of course we have our, you know, our letter responding to the OLO report. But frankly, we have not done well enough in this regard for a long time. Very, very hard to look at what the strategies should be to ensure that we are cutting a wide swath in our recruitment of folks. We partnered with HBCUs. We started that this year. It didn't reap what we thought it would, frankly. We're working with Ana Jimenez University to figure out that pool as well. It may take some time. We have put in place some hiring practices around hiring for equity, so we make sure we have the right people with the right belief systems that we're hiring for, because it's important that you have people that share your values when you're bringing into the system. But we have a lot of work to do in terms of diversifying the staff in Montgomery County, and we're working very, very hard at that.
Can I just follow up on that point? So has the school system done a mapping of, for example, per school to see, let's say, what language capacity you have, or how many, you know, teachers who maybe are Latino or African American, et cetera, and then kind of compare that to schools who have a certain percentage, let's say over 60% peaceful students or something like that, as a short-term strategy first to see what we have in our system as we move forward with these other initiatives, maybe with HBCUs, et cetera, which of course are going to be more long-term because it takes a little while. But is that something that has been done?
We have the data. We have not assigned people to schools according to their demographic profile. But certainly the data does exist in terms of diversity of staff in schools, but we don't assign people according to.
So you don't assign people according to the language need of the schools?
Well, certainly we put people in, when it comes to language, we certainly ensure that every school has the capacity to address the needs of kids with, you know, whether it's ESOL teachers or whatever it might be. Because we do support the language needs of our kids.
So I just want to be on record that, you know, I think the time has come for us to take a different approach, especially, you know, as it relates to those schools that we know may not be doing very well. The demographics are, you know, at such a percentage that it's extraordinary, because it's not just about, for example, using the language line, or, you know, it's also about how do you build that trust with parents, and if we really do want parent engagement in a very active way, you know, we have to be real. I mean, the research is what it is, and so why not take advantage of the capacity that we already have in the system, and really almost, you know, elevate those folks, and give them also that kind of, I mean, I think that would go a long way, because, you know, it's going to take a while for us to obviously build up the numbers, but if we have it in place, I think we should be more strategic about how we use them.
So regarding the scalability question and the question around English language learners, under Dr. Navarro's leadership, we are overhauling a very hard look at our ESOL programs, create some consistency. We've seen the schools that have been implementing the shelter instruction observation protocol, which is a very, very good approach to English language learner instruction, seem to be getting better results, so that's something we're looking at scaling. But under Dr. Navarro's leadership, with money we have in the budget, we're taking a very hard look at our English language learning programs so we can improve those. Particularly with the demands in Common Core, the literacy demands are significant. And frankly, every teacher is an English language learner teacher. Right? Every kid is learning the English language in some way, shape, or form. Some come at it having speaking another language at home. Some come at it because, you know, having heard a lot of words from the time they were born. Some come at it without hearing a lot of words. So every teacher needs to have some facility with English language acquisition. And we need to really improve and shore up our overall approach to English language learner education. Regarding scalability, so there are a couple things that we've done. One is we have developed a level of like structure. So rather than the supervision of schools being according to cluster and vertical structure, all the high school principals, all the middle school principals are under the same supervision, and that's really helped with the sharing of practices. They look at their data together. They actually visit their schools together, say, what are you doing here, what are you doing there, to increase advanced placement, success, decrease suspensions, whatever it may be. And we're very, very explicit in our framework around the expectations that we have for adults and kids and the accountability measures in there. We also have been talking about our 5 core strategies that are non-negotiable. We expect every school to follow in no particular order, right? So academic rigor and cultural proficiency remains incredibly important for us. We have to have a rigorous course of studies. We have to have cultural proficiency in your school. Again, how you may do that, there's some schools that may do cultural proficiency by doing a book study, some may do study circles, right? And that's okay, but you gotta do something. We continue, of course, to ensure that our resources are allocated to where the greatest needs are. And that's across the system, but it's also expected within a school. We are focused very deeply on our human capital, our talent management. We've sent a very clear message to the principals: you must put your most effective people with your most vulnerable kids. That's something that we absolutely expect, and it's something that we're working closely with our associations on as well, and we're expecting our career lattice is going to help promote that as well. We continue to focus on continuous improvement. So the school improvement plan, right? Every school has a very consistent school improvement plan, a very consistent process for looking at their data, and a very consistent approach to then improving instruction in that way. And then, of course, our community engagement work is something that we are deeply focused on with our new community engagement teams. We've been doing markets. We're partnering much more with Health and Human Services and our new early warning indicator system that we shared with the board the other day. I think is going to get us to the next level because we're able to identify kids at a very early age who may be at risk. So there's incredible consistency amongst the expectations and the strategies. But again, I use the analogy sometimes that it's around somewhere in health and wellness, right? So what I do at the gym, may be different than what Phil does at the gym to be healthy. But we're not going to negotiate over whether both of us have to go to the gym and be healthy, right? But how we do it may look a little different based on who we are and what our school is. So those 5 core strategies are consistent throughout the system. Consistent expectation. The school improvement planning is consistent. We have a level-like structure that enables us to our principals to be learning from each other. And we have very consistent metrics for determining our success and ensuring accountability for our schools.
And the Mets classes?
The Mets classes. The questions, are they overcrowded? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, the feedback I had gotten is that because of the unaccompanied minor issue, there have been definitely not enough, I guess, capacity with the current classes that were there. Is that the case? Are you thinking about some other?
I don't know that I've
issue,
heard.
no?
Larry, where's Larry? Have we heard that there's a?
Yep, we're looking into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've been tracking it, and we'll put the resource there. If we're finding there's that we need the teachers, we'll make sure we absolutely track them.
I've got Ms. Brandon.
I think it was after.
No. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on some of the issues that Nancy had put out on the table. One thing that we as a board do together every year is we adopt some of our board budget interests, which are really our way of putting out some of the common concerns that we share. And one thing that is very key priority for the board, Nancy, as you had addressed, was the issue of reducing variability and really looking at how we allocate the resources that we have to get at that. And that was part of what you said. Dr. Starr has spoken to it, but I think some of what is the bread and butter of the ongoing work the focus on the interventions that are needed at different schools. Those all grow out of what are the shining lights, what have been the best practices, and how do we provide the foundation for other schools to be able to build on those models. And I feel like that's an important part, that in addition to some of the, the personalized instruction that we're doing. The school system, in reorganizing some of the teams that we have that really focus on the issues of addressing those students who are not being successful, we have these equity specialists who are working at every school, recognizing, and this is a point I remember vividly that you used to make on the board, we're not going to do better at the gap by hiring more and more equity specialists. We're going to do better by making all the staff we have culturally proficient to be able to work with our students. And it's building on that model that we have made some strategic reinvestments and strategic organization to begin to address some of that. So I just wanted to sort of say there's obviously a shared common interest in looking at that. The concept that we had talked about focus schools at the elementary level, which was that differentiation, is rolling up into the secondary. Some of it is around additional assignment of math content coaches, some of it is around additional assignment of reading support, but it's really that question of looking at performance and allocating resources to support the opportunity for all children to succeed, not creating sort of equal assignments across the board. So I just wanted to sort of say on behalf of the board, we obviously, it's a shared interest. There are some key things that are going on, and you're right, they need to continue to be funded.
Councilmember Berlin?
Good morning, Dean.
Good morning.
A comment and a question. One of the things that I don't think we have done collectively very well is coordinate the school system, our planning board, and our council when we do master plans. My own experience of the White Flint situation was it wasn't us at our best. We now are going to face something in West Bar, in which we have a master plan in West Bar, in which the very first issue that comes up in the conversations about our desire to make West Bar be all it can be is school overcrowding. So there has to be a way that we can work together as a council, as our planners, and our school system, so that our county's desire to grow in the right places, in the right way, is met with the school system understanding what our desires are and helping us creatively get it there. Because I just find it's not great when you're really trying to make something pop and the one question is, my elementary school is like totally overcrowded, and that's you don't get past that. We need to get past that collectively. So I just invite future conversations and collaboration as to how to make that happen.
Yes.
Second question I have is I was listening to you, I was struck by how often you talked about metrics and performance and being real clear with your principals, et cetera. This is what we need to achieve. My question is, how transparent is that?
So I think it's twofold. One is the metrics are all online. Everything is online. It's in our strategic planning framework, which we hand out everywhere we go. It's very clear, third grade, fifth grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, and graduate college and career ready. We will be
by school? I mean, is it?
So I was going to tell you, right, so we will be publishing, you're probably familiar with Schools at a Glance. We've revamped that to align it to our school support improvement framework, which we will be publishing within the next month, let's say, every school, and you'll be able to actually see, we're probably about 90% there. You'll be able to see the metrics as well as the school improvement plan and engagement, et cetera, because we want to put it out there. The big challenge we have right now, frankly, is the shift and transition in the assessments. So there's no point in talking about the Maryland State Assessment anymore. There's just no point. So what we've done is we are now using MAP M and MAP R, which is a national test to determine our rates of proficiency by school, et cetera. That's 3rd through 8th grade. So this has been this is actually our first year with it. I'm sorry, we've used it before. This is our first year using it for this purpose, and part of that is because they just changed about 25% of it to be aligned to the new standard. So again, there's the old test doesn't mean anything. This year is the first year we have the new test. all of those measures have changed. But the good thing is we're now in the first year of being able to benchmark because we're seeing that transition take hold with those measures. The measures that we continue to have, so suspensions, right, which we've reduced. Those are certainly all public, all online. Advanced placement, SAT, all those ones that we use are all public, all online. And we do believe that our new school support and improvement framework reports by school will help folks understand it even more. Again, we're expecting that to be up within the next month or so. We're just putting the finishing touches on the system itself.
So will that allow a parent to say, in this school, what is expected of this school is to achieve these outcomes, and then over time to see whether or not we're getting there?
Yes.
Mr. Berkeley.
I guess a couple different things. Mr. Berliner, thank you for your question, because this issue of the planning board and the school board and the council kind of working together as the county continues to grow and shift is one that we tried to address several years ago in the beginning stages by getting the board and the council together, meaning the planning board, and the Board of Ed together annually to have some conversation. Now, if we could actually get all three bodies together and have some conversation, that would be great. And I would advocate for that.
That was our plan.
Right. I mean, that's a great way for things to happen. And when we look at, you just go back to the decision you just made a few weeks ago on White Oak. While schools weren't a big thing, if you talk to some folks, it is a piece of that,
It's a piece of whatever we do.
Exactly. And really understanding it, so I just want to throw my voice to the need and understanding the need, and I think the board is clear that need is there, because when we plan forward and we haven't done our best, meaning looking at what happened with White Flint, our kids suffer and our families suffer, because if you're looking at a footprint that is way too small for an elementary school or middle school or the need for an additional high school, you get the complaints and concerns that we need those resources. So I think we're aware and definitely trying to figure out ways for us to get together. Nancy, you raised the issue of the diversity of our staff, and that's been an issue that we've talked about and worked on for a long time, and just recently I do want to encourage you or your staff to look at the board meeting we had a few weeks ago, and we had a presentation on the issue of equity and cultural proficiency and competency.
I read the packet, but I didn't see the presentation.
Yeah, the presentation is really worth it because there were things that weren't in the packet. One, the presentation by Manifa McKnight, the principal, I think, in Martin Luther King Middle School. Ridgeview Middle School. Doing some fantastic work in terms of bringing together the work we're doing on equity and really looking at how are we doing in terms of our cultural proficiency and what needs to be changed in that building. Because the reality is we have a staff that doesn't reflect the students that we have in our buildings. We know that, and that's something that needs to be worked on. And I think, to be very honest, we have done a less than adequate job over the years because it hasn't necessarily been the focus. And I think that there's a little bit more being done on that. One of the things that she was able to see is that she needed to take on her math classes and really work at how they were organized, possibly who was teaching them, and the work that she did over that year or this year and a half has yielded some significant growth. I mean, we saw student performance moving up 20 to 30 points with both our African American and Latino students. That is significant. And it was evidence to me that if we put this work at the center of what we do, we could have some real growth while we're still dealing with the issue of how do you diversify your staff. Just to say, Ms. Brandman raised the issue of our budget priorities, one of our budget priorities is in fact to make sure that we recruit and retain a staff that reflects our community and reflects our student body, which is really important. So that work is ongoing, and I think that one of the other pieces that came in the presentation was a statement from Dr. Inger Swenson, who said something important, which is the perception out there for many folks who want to get into teaching is that Montgomery County isn't open for business for candidates of color.
She said off limits.
Off limits. Thank you. And that was candid. That was very candid.
Very telling.
And telling and important to finally put on the table. Because one of the things that we know is if you look at Montgomery County's staffing and hiring, you look at Prince George's staffing and hiring, you look at the District of Columbia's staffing and hiring, while we border each other and we're close enough that if anybody wanted to apply who may be dealing with geographical issues, you could apply at any of the three. Prince George's and DC are hiring African American and Latino
Prince
teachers.
George's is actively recruiting our
Exactly.
staff of color.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, they are.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it really raises the question of a cultural issue in terms of, do we have the culture that says we want you here? And that has to be addressed. And I think that you know, there are some of us that are challenging that, and Dr. Starr, to his credit, is starting to do that work and pushing, but we've got to push harder. We've got to push harder, and I feel very strongly about it, and we've got to put some numbers behind it. So, you know, I've talked to our chief academic officer, our deputies, and I think there's work to be done, but there's a sense of partnership that has to be built in terms of not just simply are we going to go to HBCUs or are we going to go to these colleges, but are we creating a culture where people feel welcome and wanted to be here?
And can I just very quickly add also an article in the Atlantic that really dissected the reasons why teachers of color leave the profession at such high rates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because once they're in, it is just such an overwhelming emotional toll to feel so responsible
Right.
for, you know, this issue of the achievement gap. And unless we also provide those types of supports and, you know, surround them, apparently they have the highest rate of just leaving the profession at very, you know, rapid.
Gives me a great opportunity to plug a new program. We just started the BOND program, which I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's specifically targeted at our African American male teachers to give them support. Again, we're piloting this. We're trying different ways to get through our equity unit to figure out how to bend that curve. And we have very strong affinity groups in our system. CABSE, which is Montgomery County Association of Black School Educators, the Hispanic Educator Alliance, they just changed their name. Yeah, and then our Asian, again, I think they just changed their name too. But we have various affinity groups. Yeah, they just changed that one too. But we're doing some things specifically to try out, right, how do we as an organization provide supports to make sure that we have a very strong retention rate for teachers of color in our bond program, which started last month.
Okay.
So I think I think our one of the issues is we do need to put some numbers to it, because one of the problems that I've had over the years is kind of the issue of, well, there's just not enough recruits out there. That's just bull, okay? That's just bull. So I think that just coming soon, and I've asked this of our staff, is to look at our numbers over the last 6 years, look at DC, look at Prince George's County, and then we're ultimately gonna need to put some numbers to it and set some goals, you know, because I think if we don't set some goals, we're not gonna see a significant enough change. But in the interim, as we're doing that, the work that we need to be doing on equity and cultural proficiency is important, because whoever is here and whoever is in front of our children need to know who they are, and they need to really be working with them. So just wanted to finish that off.
So I've got 5 folks left on the list, and it's 10:04. So I'm just going to ask that we try and keep it brief so we can get through everybody. So Councilmember Branson?
Okay, so, I have a whole page, but, so here's where I'll start. Because I believe in context and seeing linkages, right? So, so let's start with the school improvement plan. I mean, you've mentioned that every school has a school improvement plan. I think that's a great thing, I assume. And I assume that the purpose of the plan is to figure out how to make it better. So I guess my question is whether diversity of staffing and the achievement gap specific actions that must be taken at each school, because everybody's problem is not the same, is included in the improvement plan, and whether or not those things are in turn tied to people's promotion, retention, etc. It's time to be real. You can't, it is no coincidence that these are really all parts of the same kinds of problems. A lack of parent engagement for Black and Latino kids, a lack of diversity staffing for Black and Latino teachers, an achievement gap for Black and Latino students. Well, I don't think we don't need Einstein here to figure this out. There are linkages, and unless there is a determined effort that ends up in people's personal careers, there will never be a motivation to change. So that's one. Get back to me on how those issues can be put into the school improvement plan. Maybe developing a chief diversity officer position would be a good place to start. I don't know. I also want to echo and what you said, what was said on White Oak and development and the need for the planning board, the council, and the schools to sit down and talk. I mean, the East County is about to boom. The last thing we need is for this boom to be hindered by a lack of great schools. The people in the East County have suffered long enough. It really, you know, there really needs to return some investment in many different ways to that part of the county. And then finally, I want to talk about really, I guess, what are big picture equity issues. And I recently found out that that for some classes there were fees charged. Fine, I understand that. But that waivers are available. So I'd like to understand, and I'd like for you all to make transparent the waiver process. I understand that basically no one is denied a waiver, you know, but I'd like to know if that's really communicated at every school, whether records are kept on who gets waivers. I mean, you know, kids should not be kept out of learning opportunities because their parents can't pay for some supplies. And so, you know, I'd like to see some, you know, some sort of concrete evidence that that waivers are available and everybody knows it, and all you have to do is ask. And then finally, you know, I would really, like I said, all you gotta do, you don't have to answer, all you gotta do is get back to me, give me like paper. There is, you know, there was an spending on outside counsel. According to the Washington Post, I believe you all spent about $140,000 on one engagement, but the article read as though there were other engagements, and so I'd be interested in knowing what the total spending on outside counsel was for this calendar year, and maybe 2 calendar years back.
It's reported on the board's, it's reported on the board's consent calendar once a month, and the board, our legal fees to outside counsel is reported there. We can certainly give it to you.
If y'all can compile and just send it to me, that'd be great.
I mean, it's on our agenda.
I'd appreciate it.
And fees, I have information for you.
I'd appreciate it.
Right now.
And I also will just throw in there, just for, you know, having kids in the school system, at back to school night, at every back to school night that I've attended so far this year, the teachers have very specifically, any class that has any kind of fee incorporated with it, photography, art, any of those things, the teachers have all very specifically said to all of the parents there that if anybody needs a waiver, there are waivers, and that they should talk to them or anything like that, and that no one is denied for.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Ransom.
I'll yield in the
Leventhal?
interest of time, I'll take on the issues later.
Okay, Councilmember Florine.
I'll be quick. Well, just one observation on the school capacity issue. That's certainly a useful conversation, but I will say most of that is within the board's control. I would urge you to think when you're building schools to make them more land use sensitive, which means up and not out. Not catering to the driving class, given the amount of money we spend on buses. Give some thought to how you go forward in that regard. But my question, and don't get mad at me, is the algebra question. And is it only our kids who are having trouble passing this test? Because the stories that we follow in the paper never describe any other jurisdiction. So how do we rank vis-a-vis the rest of the state on our kids being able to get through this apparently insurmountable barrier of algebra, which I am sympathetic to?
So there are a couple different ways to address that. One is we're the only district that makes the data public. I mean, I'm sure if someone wanted to go and ask for the data in other districts, they could get that data.
So
take a look.
Do we know?
We have not done an MPIA request, nor do I know if a newspaper or anybody else has requested data from Fairfax, Howard, whatever it may be. So it's not clear that, you know, we're the only ones that have made this public.
Yeah.
So
But those are county exams as opposed
exactly.
to the state exams.
That's
I think
right.
they're doing final state
So
exams.
there are a couple.
Just the county exams.
So we will know once the park exams are out this year, and again, it'll probably take 3 to 4 years before there's a stable test, just knowing how tests work. But once that test is out, we'll have a much better sense of comparisons. The other piece is we look at course completion, right? We do frankly have somewhat of a contradiction in our policies around this that we're taking a very, very hard look at. Kids do not need to take the exam in order to pass the class. I was online at the grocery store the other day, and there was a dad and a kid, I think it was a sophomore, behind me, and there had just been an ed line, and he said, yeah, I don't really need to take my biology. I'm really focused on Spanish. Right? So, and I mean, literally, because he knew, because of our grading and reporting, they know that they don't necessarily have to take the exam in order to pass the course. That policy goes way back. So what we look at is course completion. And our course completion numbers, oh, absolutely. Our course completion numbers are so much better than our passing numbers of the exam. There are other factors that come into play as well. At middle school, there's a much higher, where it's required, there's a much higher rate of passing. And let me be clear. So in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that we have no issues regarding math instruction, that math performance is wonderful, and that math is one of the toughest things to crack for all schools in America. The measure, though, that people are obsessing about and are using, and that continues to get reported on, is not the measure that we use that gives us an accurate depiction of what where kids are. Every school is required and accountable for having a plan to address the math issues as well as the literacy issues of the kids. It goes back to the school improvement planning process, knowing each kid where they are, right? We saw some really positive results from work this summer. We're down to, I think it was probably 280 kids or so that that didn't pass after the interventions this summer. But the failure of the exam issue is not actually an accurate depiction of whether or not kids can do Algebra 1. It's just something that has caught on and captured people's imaginations. And I would love to see some comparative data of other districts that give a countywide test, but they have not made those data available in the same way that we have.
That's very interesting, thank you.
All right, so Councilmember Elrich is going to have the last question. Before he does, I just want to say that it's obvious from the questions and from folks that continue the dialogue that this certainly should continue. So under leadership of the next council president, you know, I think that something like this is extremely beneficial for us because not everybody sits on education committee. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to talk about things that you know and you're hearing and just have an open dialogue about concerns and how we can continue to move forward. So with that, I want to say thank you. Councilmember Elrich, last word.
So some of my questions are things I don't want answers for. Don't expect you to be able to give an answer for today. But I do want to say that I did the Burtonsville Parade the other day. I was accosted by elementary school teachers who know I taught, and the first thing they went off on was the math component of Core 2 in elementary school. And I have similarly been told by parents, I can't tell what the right answer is that my kid's supposed to put down on this paper. And my reaction to things like that is, if an adult can't tell what the right answer is to a math question for a kid in 3rd and 4th grade, there's something wrong with how this is being done. But I do think there are issues with Core 2 math, and but this is a philosophical, possibly a pedagogical question, which we're not going to have here. We used MapR when I was teaching, and that was 8 years ago. We used MapR because the state test didn't let you place kids into groups. So on the one hand, while it's comforting to say, well, they're failing our test, but they're passing the state test, if you also know that the state test, passing that doesn't allow you to accurately assess a child's achievement, you box yourself into a conundrum because that test is not a very good test. And that's why you're using MapR, because the state doesn't tell you what it should. So I'm going to take comfort out of passing state tests. As a teacher, I never took any comfort out of passing the state tests. I'd be interested in getting a portable analysis. There's been a lot of discussion about how many kids are in portables. I don't believe that there should be no kids in portables because you would basically build for the highest point of the bubble and then have a bunch of empty space, and then God forbid do what the previous council did, which is close a bunch of schools and then compound the problem. But it would be good to have an analysis of what do you need for long-term sustainability, and what do you need to manage bubbles. And I think then communities that have some certainty that when they see a portable pop on their property, it's a bubble problem, not like our idea of a permanent solution to the issue. I'm interested in, because there's a lot of discussion about what's different in the curriculums, I'd like to see some concrete examples about what's an actual different objective for algebra under Core 2 or the PARC test, as opposed to what's an objective for algebra under the MSAs or the MISPAPs, which I was familiar with. The issue about the hiring, I think, is legitimate, but I've been just looking at data at who's graduating college, and the college graduation numbers are grim, because you're getting, all the disproportionality that you see in the school system is reflected, probably even worse, in the disproportionality in college graduates. And when you look at, particularly the African American male category getting education degrees, there seems to be a view that if I'm going to go to college and get a degree, I'm going to make some money, and this isn't a profession to be making money in, and so it's not incentivized. And but I think that when you talk about the local issue, it's good to have a context of what's available. It would be good to know whether your hiring standards are different than the hiring standards of surrounding jurisdictions. When I taught, I was expected to have a certain score on the county's test and a certain score on the national test. Do the other school systems require the same level of proficiency that Montgomery County requires? Because I think that's legitimate. And the last thing I'll say is on capacity. I mean, I'd love to have this discussion. I think that you ought to ratchet down the capacity numbers. I mean, when I came on the council, we were letting clusters go to 140 or 145% of capacity. We shouldn't be doing that, and we don't, because I put in something to knock it down to 120. But in the Westbard case, Roger and I may have different views on this, there is no transit there. There is no reason to try to pop a lot of development in a place where there's no transit and then compound the school problem, when I've got places where I can actually serve people with transit and it makes sense to locate them. So I do think we have to have a discussion about where things go. And I wish you would play a heavier role in saying, don't put this much stuff here unless you actually plan on building a school for it, and a proper school.
So, again, yeah.
Just one quick thing. Again, I would ask council to provide us the opportunity to share what's coming down the pike regarding park, the UAPs, and I've talked to this for a while, but it's just so important. The shift that's going on, that's happening this spring, is enormous. It's enormous, and I think that it's just important that you all, as county leaders, when people are asking you about, well, wait, why did this happen, why this change, that you understand what's being asked differently.
What is PARC, Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry, PARC is the new state test. There are two Common Core aligned testing consortiums, Smarter Balanced and PARC. There are 14 states in the District of Columbia that will be taking PARC, Partnership for Readiness in College, the acronyms. And then there's Smarter Balance. So there are 46 states altogether, but most have either agreed to take either the PARC or Smarter Balance to test. Maryland is the new state test in Maryland, but we'll be able to compare to 14 other jurisdictions. The difference in what kids are being asked to do is significant. I cannot stress that enough. And I would love the opportunity to just have you play around with it a little bit so you understand that and get an understanding of what it is we're reorganizing ourselves for and what to expect, frankly. Because they're just, the demands are significant. So if there's, I would love the opportunity to help you understand some of that if you would schedule.
Absolutely. So between myself as current council president and future council president coming in, we will certainly see if we can try and set that up as soon as possible. I think that, again, this dialogue is extremely important. There are a number of things that council members have asked for as far as data or comments, so if you could please just get that information to them. I know that all folks are taking notes in the room, but I really appreciate this. I think that we need to do it more often. I think this has been extremely beneficial in terms of talking about a number of things that we can follow up on. So wanted to say thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to our student member of the board as well for all your work.